Okay, so now that we walked through the literature review, the research that has been done, you should arrive pretty clearly at your own research questions. These are the overall guiding questions that shape your research project. These should clearly follow from the lit review in that it should build on that previous research and it should fill in holes that have been left behind by that research, things that people haven't done yet. I can't tell you how many papers that I've read that people kind of wander through the literature, the research, and then just kind of restate the problem that they said at the beginning of the paper. That's not what you're doing here. This should be much more clearly informed by what's already been done. So if you come back and say, I want to know, do student athletes perform worse, and yet you've just told me about 5, 6, 7 research papers that says that yes, they do, then it's not really clear why this is building on that. What is this adding to the discussion? You're just restating something that we already know the answer to. Most of us have worked through this discussion in class, in methods, and in the senior field class. But you need to make sure that you are clearly building on that research. These research questions should be specific and focused. I'm looking particularly at HBCUs, or I'm looking particularly at student athletes at PWIs and HBCUs and breaking down by gender or minority serving institutions. So these should be very clear and focused questions. And again, if you're simply restating something that's already answered in the literature, then it's not clear to me why you're even doing this research or why it's important or what it's adding to the world. After you state your research question, then you're going to tell us how you went about trying to answer it. Maybe you have particular hypotheses or things you think you're going to find. Either way, your discussion of your methods should be in-depth and detailed. It should not be a couple sentences. It should let us know exactly what you did and where we would go to find it. It should not be offhand like a quick paragraph. That is not what a good scientific paper does. Right? So this should be a detailed discussion of your methods, an overview of the people you spoke to, age, race, gender, background, how many you sampled, how did you sample, so how did you go about finding these people if you interviewed them, how did you conduct the interviews, what kind of interviews, was it a survey, was it in-depth, did you just do observations, how did you choose where you did your observations, why, right? All of this should be guided by a discussion of why is this appropriate to answer your research question, why is this a good way of getting at that question? If you say, I want to know the rates of female participation in sports, and then you do in-depth interviews with 2 male athletes, that's not answering your question. Right? So we want to be clear about why your methods are appropriate to answer your question. If you use secondary data, then you need to go and look at how that data was originally gathered and be very, very familiar with it. So a lot of secondary data is previously executed surveys. You need to look at how they did that. How did they conduct it? Do they do it online, in paper? Do they do both? Who did they survey? How many did they sample? How did they go about finding their sample? Was it a random sample? All of those are things that you need to be very clear about. What is the size of the sample? All of those things are important, whether you're using your own methods or secondary data. You need to have this information, and it should be in-depth and clear so that your audience is very clear about how you went about getting your information. Now, these are student projects, so it's okay if they're not, absolutely as rigorous as a massive survey. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be rigorous in your discussion of them.